usually runs this, Curelet-Balan, is actually at Xamarin Evolve down in Orlando, I think. And she's somewhere sunny. I saw her in shorts. So she's at Xamarin Evolve. There's a lot of big announcements today about Xamarin Evolve, what they're open sourcing and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure she'll have lots of things to talk about the next time at the next Xamarin session. So tonight I'll just go through a couple of these. We're gonna welcome Andrej Marukovic, and he'll talk about defensive programming in .NET using code contracts. There's just a couple of announcements I want to go through here. If I can get through this. Come on, let's go. Nope. I think I have the same problem that Lori does. I'll go small. So, special thanks to our sponsors, Microsoft, and to the sponsors for tonight, and thank you to them. And if you love to tweet hashtag CTTDnug or C# when you're talking about tonight's session, you can follow us at CTTDnug. We're pretty active on there. And if you want to rate this meetup afterwards, leave some constructive feedback for Andrej. I know all the speakers like to know what they can do better and what you guys appreciated so that they can do more of that. And if you're looking for a job, this is, we do have a job posting board. So if you know of a job and you want to add it, or if you are looking for a job, please check it out on our meetup page. We are looking for sponsors. We still have a few more sessions. We're going to have a session next month with Max and David talking about TFS. And then at the end of the month, we are at the end of the year in June, we're going to actually be doing a makeup session. Arlen Nagara is going to be talking about his PowerShell stuff that got canceled in February due to the ice storm. So there are a couple more sessions. If you know of somebody who would like to sponsor us, or if you know of your company you think they would like to sponsor us, please let us know. There are a couple upcoming events. The Let's Dev This Community Roadshow. So the Let's Dev This tour happened in February, and that was in Toronto. And the Community Roadshow is hitting some of the smaller cities around Canada. And this one is going to take place in London, Saturday, May 28th. It's going to be at Fanshawe College. This is to encompass both the London group and the Kitchener group. So there will be nothing in Kitchener. This is going to all take place in London. Right now we're at about 20 signees, and we can always use more. So if you guys are interested and you want to come out, we're going to talk about everything that the tour covered. So we'll talk about what's new in .NET 6. We'll talk about cloud. We're going to actually talk about some OpenStack stuff that was not mentioned in the tour. So we're going to talk about some Angular stuff and some single-page apps and some React stuff. Jeff Dutra will be there talking about React stuff. So we're going to have tons of new sessions and information. So if you're interested, check it out. We're always looking for more people. And finally, I added this just now. So Build happened last month, and if you were here, and we talked about what came out in Build. The Build tour is coming back. Did anybody go to the Build tour last year? I know Andrej was there. Okay, cool. And that was at the Design Exchange. I mean, the venue itself was horrible, but the information was great. So they're actually coming back again. This is actually the only North American date that's actually on schedule right now. So this is going to be a pretty big event. It's it's not open for registration just yet. It's open to put your name in to be notified when registration is open. So if you want to be notified about registration is going to open, you go to that. Go to toronto.build2016.com, and you can actually enter your name, and they will email you when registration is going to be open. I noticed today that they actually put up the schedule. There's going to be more hands-on labs, so more interactive stuff with your computer than it's just you sitting there absorbing information. So if you're into that kind of stuff and you want to get touchy-feely with your computer, check it out. No announcements on where it's going to be in Toronto or when just yet, but I believe it happened in June last year, so it's probably going to be about the same time frame. So that's it. So, and thanks again to Microsoft. So we'll pass it over to Andrej. Andrej's a Microsoft MVP, and he comes to us from Toronto. He's spoken at this group many times. And so, welcome, Andrej.
Coach. As Ken said, I'm from Toronto. I'm a software lead at a company called Sykes. We are a leader in software in instrumentation industry. So we develop hardware for mass spectrometry analysis, and we develop software for different markets. So it includes drug, food, forensic markets, lots of different stuff. And actually, I'm hiring for my team. So if you want to work in Toronto and you're a senior desktop C# developer, feel free to contact me. About defensive programming, about code contracts. So how many people actually tried to use code contracts before? Okay, a couple. And how many people actually use code contracts? Well, nice, at least one. So actually it's why I would like to do this presentation, because code contracts were introduced many years ago. I think at 2007. It started as a research project, then it was migrated in .NET framework, and it introduced lots of interesting stuff for .NET developers. But not many developers know about them, and even less number of developers use them. So I'd like to show you which benefits you can get by using code contracts, how it can help you develop better code, and hopefully somebody will start using it. So what is defensive programming? Defensive programming is a set of techniques which allow us to create software which behaves predictably, and which, if it fails fast, and again, it fails in predictable manner. So these techniques includes different tools or different approaches. So maybe you heard about NASA approach when they have triple or duplication of the system multiple times just to make sure that everything works as expected. Also, it includes some design considerations. It includes good code reviews. And one of these techniques is a design by contract. So design by contract was, idea of design by contract was introduced by AFL language. It was coined by developers of this language. And the idea behind design by contract is that functions work with other functions using some set of contracts or mutual obligations. So each function defines what it expects as input, but in return it defines what other functions can expect as output. So simple contract. We use contracts everywhere in our lives, so why not use contracts in our software development? So this is implemented in some languages as a set of preconditions. So preconditions means that something we expect as inputs, and postconditions. Postconditions means that what we expect from the function on the end of the function. When you can use this technique, design by contract. So how many of you develop some libraries? Libraries which can be used by others. So for libraries, it's a perfect match, because you don't know how your library will be used, who will use this library, who will submit inputs in your library. So defining contract help you and ease your life, because you know that everything you're accepting only what you actually expect. So, and nothing else. I think everybody wrote something like this, right? This is normal, simple code. So this is the simplest way of the contract. So you are saying that I want anything but null, and if it's null, I throw exception. This is a simple example of precondition. With contracts, we can do it better. So if we are using code contracts from .NET library, we can modify this precondition. So code contracts is a collection of static methods which will replace your if-then statements. And these static methods are part of .NET library. So if you have .NET, you already have code contracts available for you. You don't need any additional libraries, any additional tools if you don't want, but you can install a couple of tools, and I will mention them later, to help you working with code contracts. So this library includes functions to define preconditions, postconditions, asserts, object invariants, and you can even define contracts for abstract classes and for the interfaces. In the rest of the presentation, I'll go one by one, showing you how you can define these contracts, in which situation you can use them, and what benefits they will bring you compared to old style of defining your contracts. And you can add from your experience if I'll miss something. Okay. Add. So, preconditions. With preconditions, we define which input we want or we can accept for our function. We have three ways to define these preconditions. First, we are just saying that we require some expression to be true. And next one, the same, we require some expression to be true, but we want to throw our own exception. And the final one, if you don't want to change your code much, you can leave your if statements in your code and end your if statements with this end contract block. And all your legacy contract style will be treated by compiler, by the tools, as contracts. So you're not forced to migrate all your current code to use requires. You can leave your if then throw and finalize this with end contract block. And we will talk about how preconditions work for algorithm methods. So I'll go to Visual Studio to actually show how it works. Okay. So here I have a simple console application. And what I will do, I will create some new class. I will call it employee. And let's say I'm writing some salary system, and what I want to do, I want to create some function which increase salary for this employee. So I'll have some public int salary get private set, and I'd like to have some function like public void increase salary. I want to accept amount to be increased, so int amount. And what I'll do, I'll say salary plus amount. Okay, so I can simply use this, but let's say I want to be sure that my system always behaves as expected, and I want to escape errors or avoid errors when this function is called with some negative numbers, like some hackers try to decrease salaries. So what I will do, I will say if amount less than 0, I will say throw new argument exception, and I need to provide some message. Less 0, and I need to provide which parameters is incorrect. It will be amount. So this is the usual style. And as I said, if you don't like to change this code much, so what you can do, you can say contract dot end of contract block. Okay, so you can see, because I use ReSharper, I automatically have this namespace added, and I use this thing. So all statements I have before this block will be analyzed as my code contracts, and if these code contracts are violated, it will throw exception. But it will throw exception even without this. So what benefits of using this? Benefits of using this that now you can control how your code behaves in different conditions. Because I can go in project settings and here I have new section called code contracts, and I can modify how my contracts evaluated for different builds and for different build targets. So in this particular case, I have no code contract evaluation switched on, so nothing will happen. If I want to switch it on,
so when you say nothing will happen, you mean the check action will happen, and so the exception won't throw either?
no, this exception will be thrown, but you can click here and you can switch it off. So if you want, you can click here, switch it off, and you can control it by build configuration. So for debug build, you can have full check, and for release build, you can mute all your exceptions. So I will show you how it looks like. So now I have it full. I'll go to employer. I will replace it with a new style. So instead of using this, I will say required. And I will say that my amount more than 0. So it's the same what we had before, but now it's defined using contract. So just to show you that I'm saying true, so I will switch it off. I will go to my program. I will create new employee. I will try to say increase salary -1. Oops. And what I will do, I will say console write line salary. Okay. So I have contract, but because I switched it off, I actually have it as -1. So it doesn't work, right? So now I will go back to the properties. I will switch it on, run again, and we have exception. So, and because I have host code installed, I have this nice prediction. Actually, it predicts that I will have exception. So, anybody use host code? Okay, yeah, it's a really nice tool. It can predict that we will have exception in the next step. So you don't need to actually step into exception to get it. So, you have exception, yes?
How does it affect, when you start running unit tests, how does it affect that? It seems like it's happening during the build process, right? So
it happens not in the build process. Right now it happens in runtime.
okay, so it happens in runtime, so if you're running unit tests against it, you always want to check that that's happening, right? So how do you verify the contracts?
So now you don't need unit test to verify this, because it's defined by your contract. So you already protected these cases. So you can write less unit tests. So at least for us, it's a rule. If you have contract defined, you don't need to write unit tests to actually verify these values, because it will never happen. You're protected.
So for integration tests?
Hmm?
For integration tests and stuff like that?
So for integration test, if it happened, that means you have something wrong in your whole system. So you allow values to come. So this is a good thing. You have exception, and you are fixing your system as an integrated thing.
Well, there's an exception now.
Hmm?
You can say that, because sometimes you want to test a bit of fish to throw an exception.
Yeah, so it throws exception. And so it throws normal exception in its contract runtime failure. So you can catch this exception in your test, show to developer, and developer will investigate how these impossible values actually came into your subsystem. Is that somebody else have a question?
He covered my question.
Okay. Yes.
So do you run your production code with it turned off?
Yes. So I plan to talk about this later, but I can show now that. So shut it down. And again, go into the properties. What we have this as a foo for debug, and we have release requires for release node. So this is a minimum check. It checks only preconditions. So it's still on, still in my code, in our code, but it do minimum amount of checks. So in the end, I will show you like recommended configurations for all the things, and we can discuss it.
So,
Yep.
so if you're checking input, right? If you're writing some database application,
Mhm.
you really don't want that bad input to percolate into the database.
Yes.
It'd be much better to have the app crash
Yes.
than corrupt
So
the database.
the idea is that we want to crash as soon as we can. So if something went wrong, we really want to just crash, show exception, and then fix it, instead of propagating this incorrect value somewhere, as you said, into database, into the service, and then we need to investigate how this value came in database, which subsystem was the source of this incorrect value. So this is idea, to keep everything consistent. If you can't keep all subsystems consistent, just fail. Crash, show exception, send report, but do not allow these values propagated and be saturated between different subsystems. So I will leave it for full now, and if I will run it without debugger, just to show how it looks like, so as normal. So it's your exception and application crash. Sometimes you may want to do something different, so some graceful shutdown. So how it can be implemented? You can actually catch this exception and do something, for example, log, and then shut down. So for this, I will go back to my application, and I will say contract. Dot contract failure. Okay. So every time when any part of application will throw this contract exception, I will have this event. Okay.
Did you just use ReSharper to
Do autocomplete.
generate
Yes.
that?
Yeah. It's a mix of Sharper and Visual Studio 2015. So they now really comparable in the features, but
I used them, but apparently I still need to do some studying.
so inside of this, you can simply log. So for example, console dot write line, and how it's called in this case, it's e dot what I want, let's say message. Okay, so it will log my message, and then I can just let it go, and it will crash application. Or if I'm thinking that this particular exception is not important, I want to continue do these things. So what I can do, I can say e dot set handle. Okay. So if I run it now, what I see that my message was locked, so precondition failed, amount more than 0. Okay, I put incorrect message. But it should be saying that my precondition failed because amount is less than 0, and because I said that okay, this is set handled, I don't care, do not throw exception, it will pass through and allow to do everything else without stopping my application. So we have full control. If you think that something really bad, crash. If you think something that is recoverable, then log it, send to some of your Flurry Analytics, Microsoft Analytics, and continue working. So you have tools, choice is yours. Okay, so this is about preconditions. Any questions? Any additional questions? Okay. So let's talk about postconditions. Oh, actually I didn't talk about abbreviated methods. So let's see if I have another class. Let's say I will have public class developer, which is derived from employee, and I will make this method virtual. And oops. And then I will write this method. And I want to be sure that developers benefit more from my system, so you cannot increase salary less than, let's say, 1,000. Okay? So what I will do, I will say contract. And requires that amount more than 1,000. Now I will try to compile it. And what I see the warning. So it says that this function overrides another function which requires, and it cannot add additional requires. Why? Because it will be violation of Liskov's substitution principles. Okay? So how many people know what it is? Great. Awesome. So we can apply for the job for us. It's one of the questions. If you don't know this. So what is this principle about? This principle says that if you have class A and you have class B which uses this class A, and then you introduce class C which is derived from class A, class B should be able to use class C without any changes, behavioral or API changes. So you can easily substitute base class with derived class without changes in consumer of these classes. Okay? And if you put additional requires as for the input parameter, you violate this rule, because now you tighten what consumer of your class can submit into the method. Okay? So that's why it's not possible. If you override something, you cannot introduce more requires. So, postconditions. Postconditions is something you want to verify when you exit from the method. So you want to demonstrate for users of your function what is the state of the exit. Yes.
Sorry, I want to go back a step. How would that interact with, for instance, the strategy pattern, where I've got maybe a parent interface, I'm not inheriting from a class, so I want different behavior in my two children. Is there still a conflict there?
So if you have interface and then you implement classes, so then you will not put your contract on interfaces, you will have contracts on your class levels.
And there's no conflict there.
No.
Those
So-
can't be methods that are implemented by the interface, because the interface contract will say what its contract is.
So if you're implementing
Implementation can't
contract,
violate that.
if you're implementing contract on an interface level, then yes, you will have problems. So you will need interface without contracts, and for your concrete implementation for this interface, for each concrete implementation, you need to define your own contract. So it will not be probably nice, and it's not nice because behavior will be different. So yeah, I think in every situation you really need to think how to properly do this. But it's an interesting question. So for postconditions, we're providing contracts which helps consumers to reliably use our API. So again, we have one main function or two main functions, ensures and throw. Idea is the same. First throws standard exception, second throws your exception, your defined exception. And then we have a couple of methods which helps us to analyze different values. So contract.result allows us to check what is the result value. Value at result helps us to check what is the value of out parameter on exit from the function. And the last one, old value, allows us to compare value which was in the beginning of the function and value how it became in the end of the function. So let's do the same. So I will remove this class, I don't need this for now. And here, so I can leave it as it is, but I want to be sure that my salary was changed. So it's not the same as it was from the beginning. It shouldn't be, but just, okay. So what I can say contract dot ensure that salary not zero. So as you can see, and I didn't show you this in the previous example, you can use contracts not just for validation input parameters. You can actually use them to validate state of the class. You will see more tools to do this, but even with this requires and ensures, you can check what is the state of the class when you accept something, when you start function, and when you exit from the function. But probably I'm more interested to have something different. So I will have here int, and let's say I will return salary. And I will say that contract dot result what we are saying here, we are saying, or we define in contract that when this function is called, it will never return 0 as a result. Okay? So this just states that whatever I return as a result of this function will not be 0. And I can make it even stronger. I can say contract old value, let's say salary. Not equal salary. we will see what does it mean.
So make sure that the old value of the salary is not equal to the current value of the salary.
Yeah, so we saying that by calling this function, it's not a pure function, and we guarantee that salary will be changed. Okay? And with result on return, you can do the same if you have any out parameter. So if out parameter exists, you can do result on return and check what is the state of the out parameter on exit. So you can verify all kind of parameters.
Is it convention to put all of your contracts up at the top? Or do you put posts at the bottom?
Actually, it's not convention. You have to do all the contracts.
It's required.
It's required. Yes. If you remove it, then it will complain about it. And actually, it's a good way to talk about what's going on here. So I will compile this. I will go to my binary folders. So I have here my executable. So I will open it with the compiler. And let's see what we have internally. So I have my employee class, and I have my salary function. So I have here my, I will collapse it. So remember what we had here? We had 3 contracts and just 1 statement and return. So what we have now, we have loads of different code. So all these contracts compile, converts in some statements and injects these statements in your code. Depends on the level of verification you defined in your properties. It will be different code here. So if you don't verify return parameters, then it will remove this section because no results should be verified. If you don't need to verify asserts, some additional things will be removed. So what's going on here? Compiler compiles the code. Code contracts rewriter rewrites this code to inject these additional statements. And then we execute this rewritten code and have all side effects which are provided by the code contracts. Anything interesting here? Any questions?
Good. Would now be a good time to bring up assumptions in response to Phil's question?
Assumptions? We can. Yep, we can talk.
Because they can be further. Because of course they may not apply until a certain point.
So, what we have.
It does, yeah.
I will do the same. That makes sense, but. So what we have additional statement. Assume. We didn't talk about static analysis, but one of the benefits of code contracts, not just that it throws exceptions, and these exceptions can be controlled for different build targets, but also that we have a static code analysis tool. So we can statically analyze the code and see all possible problems of the code without executing it. And sometimes, yeah, static analysis is tricky. And especially if you want to have something fast, accurate, is really, really tricky. And sometimes these tools do mistakes. And when you see that these tools do mistakes, you can do this assumes. So you're providing like a hint for the tools, saying that, yeah, maybe you think that something statement is this, or conditional object is this, but actually it's this, I'm sure. And all the tools use this knowledge to improve analysis of the code.
Is this the same with assert in C?
Assert?
Yeah.
No, it's not the same.
Can you do, let's say, you have a big method,
So,
and you play with salary a lot.
yeah.
You need to do assume if you want to before each operation.
No. So, contracts provide assert as well, so you can have assert. And benefit of this assert compared to standard debug assert is that again you can exclude this from different compilation points, and it's analyzed by static tools. But assume is just provide hint for these tools, so they can do a better work analyzing your code. It doesn't fail your code. It just provides some statements. I believe my code in this state and use this knowledge to analyze the rest of the code.
So you can use assume in multiple points.
Yeah,
in,
you can assume, and assert can be used in any part of your function. It's not required to be in front. Yes.
Is that what the color coding is about? Like the top contract
Yes.
cases are kind of
Yeah.
grayer, so those ones have to be at the top.
So these are gray and they will be completely written because in library they're actually empty. So nothing inside. It's empty code, and that's why Visual Studio Analyze and see you can easily eliminate this and hide it or gray it out. But these two functions actually contain some code and they are not grayed out.
So that if you have that the first example, you can substitute this, yeah. If I forgot, not null or something. Your first example.
You can, yeah, you can if you want, but again, it's different meaning. So requires, it provides meaningful expectations. So assert is just something, okay, yeah, something. And requires, it's defines that this function requires this to be in. Assert, you just check state. It's an intermediate state of your function, of your object. So it's a different meaning, but yeah, you can with any of these functions emulate other functions. So unlike pre-conditions, post-conditions can be defined in derived class. So it's totally fine to derive new class from this one, and in addition to check this result, check other result, because in this case you're just narrowing what result set without breaking any expectations or any behavior. Again, when you accepting something, you cannot make it more narrow set of the objects or items you accept, because by this you exclude some of the values which consumers of your class can already try to use, to submit into a function. When you return something, it's fine. Instead of returning values from 1 to 100, now you're returning just from 10 to 11, and it's totally fine. Yes.
And so if you're including a library that has contracts in it, does your project level setting affect the included libraries?
Yes.
The included assemblies, so if their contracts turned on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we already talked about assert. So assert is just variation on debug assert. It's an exception when some condition fails. Then that can be used anywhere in the code. It shouldn't be just in the form. And binary writer actually do not move. So in case of preconditions and postconditions, rewriter moves these statements from the beginning to the end. And assert is just a function, you call it, and binary writer will not move it anywhere. So it will stay in the place where you define. And yes, I am talking about the same. So if you use debug assert, you can easily replace it with contract assert, and you will have all benefits of having this flexible configuration and static analysis. So now we can talk about object invariants. Yes.
Probably is this a good time to take a
Okay,
break?
yeah,
for
let's have a
10
break.
minutes, and then
No problem.
we'll reconvene. Perfect. Okay, so we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back around 7:30.
Okay.
Let Andre grab a drink of water, and then yeah.